Hello everyone. Today we have a continuation of the science theme. We are building an image of the past world. What were the technologies? What is hidden from us? How this world in general looked from a scientific and technical point of view. And today we have Vladislav Alexandrovich Karabanov as our guest.
Hello, Oleg. I am very glad that you and I have finally come to this broadcast. You have been talking about our product, Synthesit, for a very long time. And I hope that today we will tell your listeners and our consumers something new. Perhaps something new, although many people already know what Synthesit is.
But we're going to tell a real discovery today, or rather you're going to tell it. It's just that many of us imagine alchemy and such a concept as transmutation of elements as something really fantastic. And I'm telling our viewers once again that today is not an advertisement for synthetics, but we have before us the creator of this product, drug, whatever you want to call it, and this drug is obtained by the method I just described. The interesting thing is that it's all possible.
Yes, it is possible. For 4 years we've been moving towards it. The very discovery of this. We've been moving towards it. The discovery itself was made in 2019. At the end of 2019, we received the conclusion of the Research Institute of Medical Primatology. We first tested on plants, then on mice. And we passed the laboratory of new primatology. And at the end of 2019, the head of this laboratory, Mr. Bulgin, called me. And he said he's a PhD candidate in medicine, specialty. And he said he didn't know what neuroprimatology was. He said he doesn't know what neuroprimatology is. I said that the results were that the mice that took Synthesit had 2.5 times more stem cells in their hemopoiesis than the mice that didn't take Synthesit. We gave Synthesit not in powder, but in aqueous solution. And then we interacted with it there. Then this in itself is a phenomenal case, a phenomenal discovery that there is a drug, a mineral that increases the production of stem cells by the body. Because stem cells are the cells from which all organs of a living organism are built. And then we've already started to slowly develop production. It synthesizes everything. You've already told the audience about it. But I'll tell you again, it's iron. It is almost ordinary iron, but it has a slightly different isotopic composition because it is created. And after 3-4 months, the consumer can already take it. And as a result of this intake, he gets a very powerful charge. People started to write that they have more energy, more strength. They are healthier. We thus confirmed the action of Synthesit. And this was the most important thing for us. And so for 4 years, we've been doing this, researching it, including with your listeners. What do you mean researched? This iron, again, but it's a young iron.
Vladislav Alexandrovich, you really don't have the word transmutation or alchemy in this article. There is such an abbreviation, I understand why it was allowed. Artificially created iron. Well, in general, for an educated person, everything is clear here. Artificially created iron. So it's not made of iron, which in general is a revolution in the physics that you and I have studied since school, and the same chemistry. So this is what was always presented to us as science fiction. How can you artificially create iron from non-iron?
It's the result of several serious years of experimentation. A number of years of experimentation. A huge amount of experimentation. When I studied the sources, I came to the conclusion that modern science limits itself a little bit by constructing postulates that, in my opinion, contradict common sense sometimes and the facts of nature and human history. Then I came across, let's say, the moment when I dealt with the creation of nuclear weapons. This is also a legacy, but it's also a legacy of some kind of technology, maybe. Again, maybe, I'm not saying that, but it is possible that these technologies once existed and were used by man. In this case, the word transmutation or alchemy, it all entered our vocabulary from, let's say, medieval literature. Well, we learn from modern history that supposedly in the Middle Ages, some fools practiced alchemy. Actually, alchemy is just chemistry. It's just Arabic for al-shami. It means chemistry. So alchemy is not alchemy at all. It's been countered with chemistry. And in fact, it is chemistry. Medieval ancient researchers, I call it that, they tried to reproduce what tradition had told them in information. That if you create a young element, then this young element will have a positive effect on the organism. And that's what they were doing. I puzzled over this question and I realized that if a huge number of people in different parts of the planet, I mean, there's the Chinese tradition, there's the Indian tradition, searching for these elements that can be created, there's the European tradition, the Egyptian tradition, then there must have been something at the core sometime. When I started looking into things like acupuncture, acupuncture is thought to have originated somehow. It's not clear how. But modern medicine still can't figure out what acupuncture is, what it affects, how it works. But it's a fact. Some people are being trained to give acupuncture sessions. I have been in contact with one of the acupuncture specialists. He says it's best to go only to the Chinese. Only the Chinese in acupuncture, because they learn from the age of 9 and start practicing at about 25. It's a very complex system, and someone has calculated that it takes 400 years to master just the 3 points that work. Every day from morning to evening to test areas of the human body. Accordingly, there are various breathing gymnastics, qigong, and a number of other practices that have come to us from ancient times. And I assume that the possibility of transmutation and its effectiveness also came from ancient times. And this efficacy, it was confirmed. That's why the rulers, generals of antiquity, medieval rulers, they strive to get a new element. History is full of stories when a chemist or a natural scientist, let's call it that, came to some ruler and said that, you know, I can make gold, and thanks to this gold, you will become immortal. Or so to speak, you'll become eternally young all the time. And actually, a lot of rulers responded to that, including, let's say, the creator of the Chinese Empire, Qin Shi Huangdi, the 10,000 ceramic soldiers that were found in China, in Finland. The 80s, which shows 10,000 soldiers molded out of ceramics all the time, where each of these soldiers has a different face. That's basically Qin Shi Huangdi's army. He created China, he unified China in 2020 BC. And he too sought access to these made elements. He had a whole entourage of people who told him, yes, we can do it, we'll do it. But as far as I understand it, he didn't achieve that. But he was convinced that it existed. Why? Because he had access to sources that said that some ancient rulers lived much longer because they embraced the elements that were made. Well, if then that's what a historical figure like Qin Shi Huangdi, the creator of the Chinese state, this empire, then I think it makes sense to believe that. The medieval alchemists said the same thing. Well, those are chemists. The same thing the famous creator of modern European science, Paracelsus. He talked about the fact that made elements, created elements, they're different from natural elements. If you take them, you will be young, active, healthy. And so I also proceeded from the assumption that this is possible and accordingly moved in that direction. In 2019, we got the first micrograms of our iron. The other issue is that I realized that the alchemists were probably looking for gold. They wrote to make gold or silver, but I assume that gold and silver are not in the metabolism of the human body, in our metabolism. And in our metabolism of such minerals that can be used, iron is involved. That is, the blood red color is the color of iron, which exchanges oxygen with the cells. That is, through the lung oxygen enters the blood, oxidation takes place, and further this oxygen is given to the cells and carbon dioxide is taken away, and it is exhaled in this way. Iron is involved in many other elements of our metabolism. A lot of elements. And so we started to move in that direction. We got it. This is the way we got it. We're not going to reveal it. It's a complicated way. It's a multi-step way. It's a way that I know. I think we will try to familiarize people, the public, with this element to expand it. Until a certain stage, until literally the last few days, we were generally cautious about informing the public that this iron was synthesized. Although a certain circle of people knew about it. But lately I have made the decision that yes, we have already accumulated statistical material that confirms that this iron has a very powerful positive effect. We have the work of a whole group of foreign scientists. In Russia, we have had studies. They are the Dr. Zoltradok, a sports medicine doctor from Budapest, and his colleagues from China, Japan, and a number of other specialists. Doctors of science who investigated the actions of synthetics on rats. Then they came out with a result. That is, it turned out that the rats that receive Synthroid, they have 30% more muscle mass, they have oxygenation. That is, oxygen perception is better. They're more active. Well, there's a whole bunch of other data that's out there. It's all published in one of the world's most serious scientific journals, Frontiers, a Swiss journal. Published January 15, 2024. And after that, we basically realized that, yes, we already need to inform the public how this iron, how it turns out in this case. By the way, we have the conclusion of the Kurinsk Institute of Sport that it can be taken. We have an athlete who became the Russian champion in high jumping. At that age, it is already high enough for an athlete. It was her dream. She agreed to cooperate with us, and in general, she achieved the result, defeating Olympic champion Maria Lushitskene. That's such an Olympic champion, world champion. Here in a nutshell, I have outlined the reasons why we decided to inform the public already. And first of all, I wanted to inform through your channel, because you have been cooperating with us for a long time. You came to us, we talked to you. In general, you believed in our product. And I believe that you are a passionate person. You move the modern knowledge of the world. And that is why it is reasonable enough to bring this information to the public through you.
Vladislav Alexandrovich, it turns out that not only I am the first to inform, but in general, the most important thing is that you are the first person who publicly actually says that he got a positive result in alchemical actions and put it all into mass production. I have never seen such a thing that, let's say, and now people will just be shocked. That is a man-created ion from non-ion. Yes, this is the way of serious technology. I will tell the audience right away that I knew all this several years ago when I was at your company and saw a little bit of something. That is, I saw this high-tech production. It's just that Vyacheslav Alexandrovich won't reveal it. It's a serious topic. But he certainly has proved that this ion is artificially produced. What proof? It is present in his synthesis in the form of an isotope that is not found on Earth.
No. Isotopes, they all occur on Earth. It's just that every chemical element that exists, not only on Earth, but in the solar system in general, it has its own isotope ratio. There is, let's say, the element tin. It seems to be made up of either 6 or 8 isotopes. An isotope is the number of protons and neutrons that make up an atom, so to speak. And in this case, a stable iron is made up of 4 isotopes. So it's iron 54, 50, 50, and 50. And their ratio is the same throughout the solar system. I just remember it from memory. So the 54th iron is 5%. 56 is 91.8% or 91.5%. 57 is 2.11%. And the 58th is 0.282 thousandths of a percent. So throughout the solar system, this isotope ratio in any piece of iron is the same. In any piece of iron. If you cut into an apple, there's like 0.1 milligram of iron in the apple, evaporate it, send it to the laboratory. There, in this piece of iron, there will be exactly this ratio. Dig in the ground somewhere, the same thing, any piece, there will be exactly this ratio of these atoms with such isotopic weight. 4 atoms. This is stable iron. A meteorite that appeared in the solar system will fall on the Earth. Such meteorites also fall. The ancient Egyptians used meteoric iron to make their first knives. Same thing. You open it up, take a sample, go to the lab, and they'll give you the same ratio. One of our consultants, by the way, doctor of chemical sciences, he was engaged in just the study of isotopes in meteorites, including he was given. He then confirmed that yes, in the entire solar system isotope ratio, it is the same. There are slight variations. There are in minerals like iron. And so if you have ion where the isotope ratio is different, in this case we have a different isotope ratio. We knew that. We have our own instrumentation. We realized we tested our iron before we gave it to the consumer. That it's basically young, it's new. And young iron has a different isotope ratio. Why? Because it's created in the here and now. The one in nature, it came from the Big Bang of the supernova star that the sun used to be. It exploded and all the elements came into existence then. Well, according to the theory, well, maybe there's something to it. And they appeared then in that isotopic ratio. Here I've listed the natural ratio. And our iron, because it's young, we got it again, it has a different isotope ratio. Now, let's say we have the 54th element. I'll show you. I already have it, so to speak. The Swedish lab did on a modern instrument.
We're pretty much where we're going with all of this.
Yeah. Neptune plus thermos scientific. There's 4.1% 54 ion, which is 30% less than in nature. There's a little more 96 ion. 91% in nature, 93.2% here. There's a little bit more 57 ion. More of this isotope, and 58 is the same amount. Although in other possibilities, in other yields of our products, this isotope ratio changes a little bit. But it depends apparently on some, I would not say coincidences. Because of the fact that we have some changes in the components, very small. The cross sections, the different pressures, the temperature cancels out a little bit. But the iron is new. That's the most important thing.
And now psychologically, Vladislav Alexandrovich tried to show modesty so much here, but in reality, if you look at it this way, it really looks like this. Not just a scientific discovery, but a discovery that breaks the postulates of official science. Yes, it is modest. Yes, it is not clear to everyone, but our main audience that watches my channel is people with higher education. Many have scientific degrees. So many, well, most, I think, immediately realized what happened. That is really synthesized iron. And of course, now some group of us skeptics will immediately say, can you synthesize gold?
I don't want to answer that question either negatively or positively. That's a different challenge. I would not go off in that direction. It's also, of course, interesting. I personally think that the iron that we have made, in my opinion, because it is necessary for the human body, it is probably more expensive than gold. Because I know that people who, after the epidemic of the so-called, so that your channel does not block, magic virus and all sorts of injections, they were very bad. The thing is that as a result of the epidemic of injections, they got thrombosis. We had a case. One of the people we had there, we have a microscope. We know we have the technology to take blood and see how the red blood cells are arranged in the blood. So in the blood, the red blood cells should be floating, each one separate from the other. But the person who gets that shot, they're molded together. Now the creators of one of the fluids have now been recognized.
Which
that can lead to thrombosis. Right in front of me, this person received first 2 capsules of Synthroid, then 2 more capsules. The man felt sick. He realized why he felt bad. He had a loss of energy, he was forgetting things. And right in front of me, within 2 hours, first 2 capsules, then 2 more capsules, and we took the analysis, looked. And when he drank more than 4 capsules, we looked, these erythrocytes had separated. That's a fact. We have the same video on our channel about how one of the Indians came to us with his Russian relatives, and he was also shown this. And after that, the man there was bad. I think it's because of the thrombosis. And the thrombosis began to resolve and began to go away. In that respect, I think synthesized is more important than gold. Maybe in theory gold can be ingested and something will happen, but I doubt it. I think iron is in our metabolism. It's in our blood. It's the basis of our blood. It's the basis of our body processes of some kind. I'm not going to go into any nuclear theories right now. And in this respect, it is much more valuable for our health than gold. It is our iron that is alive. In contrast, people say, how can this iron be expensive? Ordinary iron is just that we have a very large correspondence. There's one of our consumers. At the same time, he corresponded with me a long time ago. He once wrote that I sent him this synthesizer once to try it, then he bought it. And then he wrote 6 months later, Vladislav Alexandrovich, I thought it was very expensive to buy your synthesite, and I started buying. He lives in America. And I started to buy here in America. Here you can buy much more capsules, much more iron content. I started to drink iron, which is cheaper. And I started to feel sick after a few months. That is, the poisoning of the organism began because there was no result, so to speak. My liver and kidneys had some problems. So I went back to synthetics. That is, you must understand that ordinary iron is dead. The reasons why young iron works are from the sphere of science, which still need to be investigated. I have a theory as to why. I've even written an article on the subject, but now, on your air, I think it's not worth going into this kind of deep research.
Well, you and I have been dealing with this topic for a long time. You in your way, we in our way. And some years ago, when I realized that all the water on the planet is born again and also materializes, but here, of course, it is not transmutation, it is a new formation. And the most important thing is that this education, it prolongs life. So we have long livers again in the Caucasus drinking this water. And the long livers, as I realized, are located near places of power. And places of power are places with increased electrostatic energy of the planet in relation to other places. And just in the process of water formation from all the rocks, we have just considered it in the previous movies. We need this energy of the electrostatic field increased. And it really turns out that these newly born elements, according to the experience of old people who drink this water, show that the newly born element is almost the best anti-gerontological remedy. And always when people ask me about our minister's synthetics, I say, this is probably the only one on the market. Well, yes, it's still a bioadditive. It has its own hard way into medicine there, but the issue is that all anti-gerontological agents, they're biologically derived. And most likely Synthroid is the only non-biological remedy that slows down aging really, Am I right or wrong about that?
I think you're right, although the topic itself is so global, just global human life, human lifespan, active human life, activity, there are all sorts of other subsections. I think you're going to fulfill your mission. Your channel is a mission. You're trying to answer questions that the public should be concerned about. Of real history, what it's been like. What depends on what... because in today's world, unfortunately, medicine has squeezed itself into some kind of framework and continues to develop. And in fact, the human organism, human health, is a more complex concept than modern medicine presents. It's a more complex concept. And human capabilities, in this case, chemical capabilities, including the creation of young new elements, are also capabilities of the same medicine. But in defense of our medicine, I would like to say one thing, that we find more points of contact with medics than with representatives of some natural sciences. Medics are more open. They work with people. Humans feel the positive influence of synthetics. And medics in general, we have had a number of research activities. There's medical primatology. There's been research done by medics in Moscow. With people who had been treated with chemotherapy, had chemotherapy sessions, and were given synthesized. It turned out that people who get synthesized in these chemotherapy sessions, they feel significantly better than people who get chemotherapy sessions for oncology treatment and don't get synthesized. There's a professor there who works with us who's such a serious specialist. She said that a person who did not receive synthesized during chemotherapy was given an injection of these substances, and he lay down for a week until he came to a normal state. And those who received synthesized, they got up half an hour after the injection, got behind the wheel of a car and drove away. Usually a person in general does not feel any difference. But when a doctor sees it from the outside, he feels it. And the doctors, in my opinion, they are located enough, some part of them, not all of them, of course, but some part of them are located to synthetics. They believe and understand that, so to speak, its action, it gives serious help to a person. And that's why I would like to praise the medical profession. But of course, the scientific specialists, there are certain problems with them. Though the term is, I just realized that we need to prove that the synthesizer works powerfully, and only then we can say that it is synthesized. A few years ago, in the beginning of 2021, I talked to a doctor of chemical sciences and he said that synthesized by us really... well, there were some points there. He expressed doubts to his colleague. I called him and told him that we had indeed synthesized the synthesite. I started talking to him at this doctor of science from St. Petersburg. He became hysterical, literally hysterical. He started saying, "Oh, is there a luminary among you?" So I said, what kind of luminary? Well, to make such a discovery. Is there a luminary? And he started, I'd put it simply, he started flipping him off. I realized that, yes, these guys are like that. You have to prove that it works first and then announce it. Otherwise, it will be difficult to deal with them. That's it. So we decided to talk less about the fact that it's iron synthesis. Less talk. That's exactly right. Again, though, here's a small point. I've been in contact with scientists, of course, as we move through the process. There is such a scientist, Bazutov. He was a permanent organizer of conferences on cold transmutation of nuclei and ball lightning. He organized 24 conferences. There were 24 of these conferences. Unfortunately, he died. There was a scientist named Krivitsky. Who wrote a wonderful book called Transmutation in Earth History. He was a geophysicist. He was an employee of the Institute of Geophysics, the Earth Institute at Moscow University. That is also in general an outstanding person. Unfortunately, he also died. But we received some understanding from some scientists. But these scientists were on the periphery of the scientific world, unfortunately. And now we have contacts with such scientists. There is such a wonderful scientist, Parkhomov, who creates a cell. It looks like a Rosai cell. So, in this world and in the natural science world, we have contacts, we have people who understand us.
I think that you took the right policy when we met with you a few years ago. That is, we excluded the word transmutation. Although you showed me textbooks from 1936 about transmutation, it was a well-known scientific concept. And then for some reason you see what the turnaround has occurred in the scientific community. And by what we are talking about now, I think this is the first such publication for our viewers. Most likely you are the first person in the world who in principle openly says that he produces transmutation. In what way? For now, of course, we can't ask Vyacheslav Alexandrovich. I think it will be known someday. There's a lot of... and metatrosium, I understand, is somewhere close to it and called nuclear fusion. But for now, of course, again, we're not going to torture, as it were, because this is really serious. And my question about gold, even you see how it sounded from the other side, if you look at it that way. So this is a really serious topic. And here we can use the work of Yuri Stepanovich Rybnikov, who also wrote about it, that transmutation takes place in nature, in the natural environment. Where, let's say, copper becomes uranium. But his theory, let's say many of you have read Yuri Rybnikov's theory, it goes against official science. First of all, it's Lomonosov's corpuscular theory. He rejects the existence of neutrons, protons, and rotating electrons, but again, it's all Janus, that is full connection with this etheric superworld. We can believe it or not believe it, but indeed he described transmutation well. That is, transmutation can be produced naturally, in nature, in various processes. It can be produced artificially. Yes, it requires some release of a certain energy, some other things there, but I'm not a physicist, as you can see. I'm an investigator, and I'm just, again, what am I doing? I'm trying to reconstruct history. I was not satisfied with the reconstruction of history, which we realized that we have it all distorted, but let's say I was not satisfied with what my associates were doing. I tried to create my own forensic way to create this picture, at least a little closer to the real history. And the further I immersed myself, the more I realized that the image, the thinking of people, the very image of these people, the image of science, it completely does not correspond to ours. And I came to the conclusion that our civilization, it's a materialist civilization. As they say in the church, we have been cut off from God. But what is God? And God, it turns out, is these supra worlds that have intelligence. It is the etheric world or spirit-like world. It builds our material world with the compaction of spirit. And you and I now notice very much. So in fact, our world, it is derived screwdriver. But in ideology and in the modern church, which has lost mysticism, we have this all cut off. That is, we are self-sufficient. Maybe it was done on purpose so that people... let's say, lost some of their pride. That is, try to spin yourself on this physical model that you've heard given to you. But again, this is only an assumption. That is, we are a materialistic civilization, in fact. And what is now, let's say, with Vyacheslav Alexandrovich, what information we learn? It has nothing to do with materialism. That is, it is something higher. So here you have to think for yourself whether to believe in it or not. Again, this is probably the wrong question. We do have proof today. All the references will be in the description. Who really understands physics, chemistry, you will see this difference of isotopic composition of synthesized iron. And really synthesized iron is iron produced not from iron, which again breaks the worldview system of official science, which stands on materialistic positions. It is not for nothing that we had all these Marxians working with this materialist position. Remember, Hegel's dialectic was idealistic. It was broken by Marx's actually materialistic dialectic, almost with the same laws, only detached from the supreme being. Although really you and I feel this connection, that is on a subconscious level we feel it. But officially, that's why official science behaves like this, because the principle is materialistic, and the materialistic principle, so that it does not go anywhere, you have to put a clamp on it in the form of a bureaucratic system. And this is how it looks like. That is, not only historical science is distorted, but also physics, chemistry, and meteorology are distorted, as we realized in the previous films. That is, we understand some functions of this secondary science so that we use modern light bulbs, phones, but many of us do not understand how the new battery in an iPhone is organized, in which, again, there is a transition of mass from salts and lithium without even the release of gas into energy. So the energy is used up and the battery becomes lighter. There was also such a transformer, Rossi, or Rossi generator, which NASA patented, where also some metal salts decomposing were transformed into energy. So this is also, according to official physics, the equation about it is impossible. Am I correct?
You are correct, absolutely correct. The only thing is that I would like to make some corrections about the way it is done. It is, of course, the way of exposure to temperature, exposure to various energies, combination of elements. So the process itself is quite material. But the understanding that it is possible, the belief in it played a certain role. I was convinced in my time that it is possible. I am practically sure that before our civilization, before our historical traceable path, there was also a rather advanced civilization which had achievements. And these achievements we should use. And the science that exists now, it has, if I can put it this way, poop at it. They began to call each other some dissertations. But it all turned into a formality. A huge number of doctors of various sciences, but it does not really move science. It still moves some kind of benefit that can be given. First of all, this is an important point, and when there are no criteria for evaluating this science, the criterion is only the decisions of superiors, then of course it closes in its own cocoon. And the benefit, so to speak, it is realized and is a self-sufficient assessment of the effectiveness of science. When they created an airplane, the Wright brothers, not a magazine, but the New York Times wrote that the Wright brothers went to test their airplane, which is heavier than air. Although any child knows that what's heavier than air can't fly. Although there were birds flying in the air, something else, but it can't fly. And so when they flew, they changed the world. Although they made a very simple demonstration that it was possible. And we continue on that path. the fact that we made this iron out of other elements, I was moving towards that. That also turned out to be possible. But really, it's not as simple as even flying an airplane. It's not that simple. And the most important criterion is that it helps people. I believe that, why does young iron help? Apparently, when life originated on Earth, it used iron that was somewhat younger than it is now. So our body is oriented to such a young iron. And what's happening now in the Earth's biosphere, I think, is a recycling of all these elements in order to draw out the ones that are younger. Well, that's the way it seems to me. It seems that way to me.
I think that really somewhere in that direction we have to dig. Most likely there may be some electric charge involved, because my understanding of the non-material world is based on the understanding of electricity. Nobody really understands electricity. If you ask an electrician, the electrician somehow knows that there is no electric current in the center of a conductor, and the current flows only along the outer surface, which pretty much sets a different idea of that electricity. And I've tried in some of the movies to argue this point. I still thought it was some kind of radiation from the surface of the conductor. That's what etheric matter gets. So it all comes back to electricity. And it turns out, as many people say, these 7 superworlds, we are interested only in the etheric superworld, creates our compaction, so-called, of the spirit. Spirit is ether. It turns out that every object, and this same iron, has some kind of etheric body. And most likely just a young element, this etheric body it has, the young element, is much bigger than the old one. That's something along those lines, but that's just a rough guess, so to speak.
Well, perhaps because it is necessary to study it, because really this iron has this life-giving potential, I would call it so. Well, I just gave you an example of an athlete who, at the age of 32, had already started to be written off from the Russian national team and was told, well, you're already a pensioner. But she had such a drive, she wanted to become the champion of Russia. At 27, she got second place, but she didn't become a champion. She didn't realize herself. She had the drive. She started taking Synthroid. After 2 weeks, she said she felt better results. She took it for almost a year. And she pulled ahead and beat this Olympic champion, so to speak, who was also competing in this Russian championship. This was in the summer of 23. She became the queen of the sport and the Russian high jump champion. We have her on our website.
I can only confirm here. You can see me on the screen. I'm actually 50 years old. I have a huge number of different acquired diseases, and in general, I am a disabled person of the second group. And I've been taking Synthroid for probably the 4th year now. I'll tell you that I feel better now at 50 than I did at 40. And that's because of Synthesit. It has this interesting thing, of course, when you stop taking it, you start to feel like you did before. It's like going from a Mercedes back to a penny. A lot of people know that feeling. When you go from a penny to a Mercedes, that's one thing. But when you go back, it's something else. Now, with synthetics, it's much the same thing. And synthesizer replaces most of the butt. People over 40, 45 years old, just for the amount of this synthesite, how much it costs, they buy various butt, including iron. Someone buys cordyceps, someone buys chuan prash. If you put it all together, in principle, synthesite replaces everything. And iron is really prescribed when hemoglobin is low. In general, I mean, if it's just iron, non-synthesized, why do a lot of people have it? Who doesn't have enough iron? Women after childbirth. Well, yes, part of aging. But it has nothing to do with the hemoglobin drop. It's something else entirely. We're getting newborn elements. We used to advertise that a pill of Synthroid replaces a bucket of newborn water.
Something like that. Thank you, Oleg, for your appreciation of this product. Well, I just want to say again that iron, it's in our metabolism. In our metabolism, it triggers not only the processes of oxygen consumption and assimilation, but also some other nuclear processes. I just don't want to go into this topic. It's a very big topic, a serious one. And it is no coincidence that in ancient Indian medicine, this Rastana, there are references to it. I was digging up stories of European travelers who came to India, met young rulers, husband and wife, and then these rulers say, "Do you know how old we are?" We are 100 years old. But we accept, we create iron here. And because of that, we keep such a young appearance. I mean, historically, apparently, there was a tradition after all. And I was wondering, when I was thinking in what direction to move, that medicine and human health is, so to speak, the most important sphere. Not gold. Archimedes was looking for gold. And in fact, the most precious thing, gold and diamond, is man's health, his activity, his productivity. When he feels healthy, active, he creates positivity, positive space around him. I think we have done something in this direction. And thank you for helping us to educate the public in this regard. Although you did not say anything ironclad until the end, as we agreed.
But however, we still hinted, do you see what kind of audience we have? And especially when we started to deal with water and such information disclosures, the majority of those who now buy synthetics and it helps them, they already imagine all this only by the aura that we have created. That we are really dealing with complicated physics. And I will end this all with the words of Vladimir Shamshuk. I have a friend, you all know him too, Vladimir Shamshuk. What does he say? That maybe he's wrong, but based on gold. That's why gold was valued. But we're human, that's why we need iron. If we were preptaloids, we'd have to synthesize it.
Let us strive for gold. Let's strive. And man, I think he's still evolving in a good way. The things that are happening around us are also elements of evolution. And the fact that we created, reproduce some ancient technologies on new basis, because to me that in ancient times it was, well, it kind of stimulated the search. To stimulate the belief that it would work. And eventually we came to this level. Thank you very much.
So there are two parallel processes. The process of education in general from all of nature. Rybnikov's theory, how hydrogen is formed from hydrogen, like gold, what we have considered in the past movies. Also the question of transmutation of some elements already developed from nature, from cyarite more precisely, into some other elements. And here, let's say, in the same tree, many people have asked, let's say, here is a tree growing on some sandy clay soils where there is only silicon, there are silicon oxides, and its fruit contains a huge amount of iron and everything else. Where does it come from? Most likely the iron is derived from transmutation of gremlin or something else within that.
Inside the living organism. Inside a living organism. It's all happening.
The result is, as Rybnikov described, the joining of tons of these atoms of all rock which are in the etheric state. that is actually two parallel processes that are constantly happening on the Earth. Again, it's the rebirth and transmutation of already born elements.
Something like that. But only in living organisms, all this happens much slower, 1,000 times slower than we can do it. The thing is that this process is difficult to study. Modern science does not want to consider them. And we have created in such a weight quantity when it is already possible to take this element as a biologically active supplement.
And we also considered transmutation once we studied the Sahara. We have a member of our expedition club, Alexei Nekin, and he found this patent of Novosibirsk scientists, which is now being used in Israel. It is called plasma pyrolysis in waste incineration, solid domestic waste. And there are also very interesting things there. It turns out that all household garbage at a temperature of 1,500 degrees burns with the release of gas and all turns into sand. That is, again, all the Mendeleev's phase there. It goes somewhere. What remains is some mineral and again silicon dioxide. And it turns out that there is also some border with transmutation. And we then understood this process, which occurred during the fall of celestial bodies on the surface of our planet. We sifted two kinds of sand in the Sahara. One was black, which is just a product of plasma pyrolysis. And the second one is pelletized, which simply passed into the upper atmosphere, which was contained in the comet material, but was heated. So it turns out that the whole of the blooming Sahara, as it burned up, it turned into this black sand, which of course doesn't have the same elemental composition that was in these forests and in this animal life. That is, the transmutation is actually still confirmed indirectly by this plasma pyrolysis of solid waste.
I think that the work, the amount of work and the scale, it is still to be assessed, so to speak. You have dotted the Sahara. I think it's not just the Sahara, it's much grander than that. Even though the Sahara itself is a grandiose territory, I think there are many more interesting discoveries ahead for mankind, including the ones you hinted at. I would put it this way.
Well, I think in principle we've told you everything there is to tell. And indeed, this movie is the first such publication for many people in general, so to speak, in terms of feeling or significance. This movie is equal to the fact that now someone would show a captured reptiloid in a cage. That is, this confusion is proven and it exists. Not only that, it is mass-produced, a stable element of iron, not made of iron, which is a completely different view of science, and I don't know what physicists, chemists will do next.
They will change some of their postulates, I hope so.
Change the bureaucracy, rewrite the algorithms.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of things I think that need to be changed, but we're not going to give advice here. Let them decide for themselves.
So goodbye. If you liked it, give it a like. I think you liked it. Write comments. All the links that we have to all these studies, we'll put them under this movie.
Thank you.